throughout the entire state of California, delivering the message of prevention to high schoolers. Now, each topic is completely different depending on what's impacting them in their area. So we're going to start off, and I'm going to ask you a question. How many of you, before today's assembly, have heard of fentanyl? Okay, good. That means our awareness program for the last year has been working. However, what my goal is for you today is that you're not just going to know of it, you are going to fully understand it. And you're going to understand what it looks like from our subject matter expert, a criminalist from the crime lab, and you're also going to be able to hear from a resident that has also been impacted by this crisis. Now, as we go on, we are going to say any question that you have. So if something comes up, if you want to address maybe possibly even a myth that you've heard, we're going to allow you to do that at the end. So keep the questions towards the end. So I think it's very important that you understand that fentanyl, there are two sides to this coin. Two sides meaning there are people that are intentionally taking fentanyl as their drug of choice. They are looking for it. It is 50 times more powerful than heroin and 100 times more powerful than morphine. But that's not the side of the coin that we're going to be addressing today. What we're addressing is fentanyl poisonings. You see, when someone has an overdose, they know what they're taking. They have an adverse reaction or possibly even take too much. But a poisoning from fentanyl is something that they had no intention of taking. You often have heard of the thing called fentanyl-laced marijuana, fentanyl-laced prescription pills. You see, that's not what this is at all. This is straight fentanyl being disguised as other things of our drug landscape. So in 2021, September, the DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration, put out their first public safety alert in 6 years. September 2021, not too long ago. And they basically said, we're getting an alarming rate of powder and pills across our borders, in every border, and it's a substance called fentanyl. In December 2022, the DEA put out another public safety alert that basically said, we have, in less than 1 year, seized enough fentanyl to kill every American. That's 379 million lethal doses. And you know, probably the scariest thing about that and all of the statistics is it doesn't matter if you're law enforcement 30 days or 30 years. They'll tell you the seizure rate is only about 10%, 8 to 10% for the border. So what does that mean? Well, the local leaders here, Yuba County Office of Education, District Attorney's Office, the Yuba City and County Task Force for Fentanyl, we all got together and said, all right, we understand it's here in the United States, but what does it look like here in our backyard? The surrounding areas here in Yuba County as well, we have noticed that there's about 3 times as many fentanyl-related deaths than gun-related homicides. We have brought in a criminalist from the crime lab to share with you exactly what this looks like in all the different forms that it's coming across in, and what it could potentially mean if you came in contact with it as well. But we're gonna start off with the very first thing is a video, quick video, kind of explain it, get our minds right, and show you what we're talking about.
You've heard about pills killing young people, right? A teenager takes what they thought was a prescription pill and never wakes up. We're not talking about a drug overdose, accidental or otherwise. We're talking about being fatally poisoned by a single pill, one that looks like a legit Xanax or Percocet or Oxycontin. Except these pills aren't legit. They're counterfeit, fake. They can kill you within minutes. And it's happening all around you. The fastest growing group of victims is young and inexperienced. They take pills for different reasons. Some of them are experimenting, others are stressed out and self-medicating. Many victims died at home in their beds after swallowing just one pill. Every young person is at risk. So what's going on? We live in a quick fix, pill popping culture, and we've been taught to trust prescription pills. In some cases, these medications are necessary, but they can also cause addiction. That's why we're in the midst of an opioid epidemic. So many people in the US became addicted to opioids that drug dealers started making fake pills to meet demand. The active ingredient of choice for these counterfeit pills? Fentanyl, a powerful synthetic opioid that's so potent it has to be highly regulated. There's no standard amount of fentanyl in these illegally made pills. They're not prescription medications. They're just thrown together in people's basements and garages with other cheap ingredients like filler powder, impressed into pill form. The dosage is never even. That's why they're so deadly. But fentanyl can be cheaply imported, and it's also highly addictive, which makes it ideal for creating fake pills. The drug cartels got involved too. They started to produce these counterfeit prescription pills containing fentanyl, known as fentapills, on a massive scale, flooding the US with millions of fakes dressed up to look like the real thing. You can't tell them apart. Authorities can't fix this or make it go away, but you don't have to be the next victim. If you don't know where your pills are coming from, don't take them. Don't believe sellers on Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, or any app. Don't believe friends who get pills from supposedly reliable dealers. Don't believe someone who says a pill has been tested. You may have heard of test strips that can detect fentanyl in illegally made drugs, but they're not reliable with pills, where fentanyl can be unevenly distributed. There's no way to figure out whether a pill contains fentanyl without grinding it up and dissolving it. In other words, destroying it. So if a drug comes to you in pill form, it hasn't been tested, period. And even if you test one pill in a batch, you have no way of knowing whether the other pills contain fentanyl. If it's not from a doctor or pharmacist, it's not legit. No random pills. Now you know the facts. Tell your friends, tell everyone you know. The more people who learn about fentanyls, the safer we're all going to be. You didn't create this problem, but you can be part of the solution. Help us spread the word. One pill can kill.
All right. So let me introduce myself. My name is Jonathan Sharon. I'm a criminalist with the Sacramento District Attorney's Laboratory of Forensic Services. Why am I here? So criminalists, we are scientists. We, in Sacramento County specifically, are able to analyze and see everything that comes into the laboratory. So we have a really good idea of what's there, what it looks like, and kind of all the different shapes and forms. And I'm here to talk to you today about fentanyl. The first thing I want to kind of square up is what is fentanyl? So you may have a question of what actually this stuff is. So fentanyl does have a legitimate reason to be in the world. So it's being created and synthesized to deal with people dealing with chronic pain. So really, really bad pain if they're going through cancer treatment, if they're going through a really invasive surgery. This is something that is prescribed in very, very controlled quantities. And when it's being made for the medical industry, it's very precise. What we're talking about today is synthetic fentanyl, or fentanyl that is being created illicitly in clandestine laboratories, which has no control. So what does fentanyl look like? This is one of those hard questions to answer because fentanyl is a bit of a chameleon. It doesn't have any one shape, form, or quality to it. We see it in multiple different bright colors and sizes and shapes. So you can see up here, a lot of the fentanyl that we're getting in Sacramento County is looking almost like sidewalk chalk. So it's got bright colors to it, really solid material, pinks, purples, blues, greens. We're also seeing it in powder form. So it can be those brightly colored powders as well. The number one form that we're seeing in Sacramento County, a neighboring county for you, are the tablets, the fake pharmaceutical pills, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But get to know that shape, that M30, that blue pill, because that's the number one form that we're seeing fentanyl distributed in Sacramento County, and it is the predominant form that we see kind of statewide. We're also seeing it in kind of other colors of those pills. So it's not just those blue pills, but we're seeing those also in blues, greens, purples. We see them have a little bit of a sweet smell to them. So deceiving you into thinking that it's something that's safe, something that is maybe less lethal than the blue counterparts. But that's just simply not the case. They're both lethal. We're also seeing it in just white powders. So it's typical white powder form. And it's not just fentanyl by itself. We're also seeing fentanyl being mixed in with all sorts of different drugs in the landscape out there. So methamphetamine, the #1 drug in Sacramento County. I'm pretty sure it's #1 up here as well. We're seeing fentanyl starting to get into the system of methamphetamine. We're seeing it in cocaine. So something that you wouldn't expect those two to be mixed. We are finding fentanyl is being laced into the cocaine supply here in Sacramento. And lastly, heroin. Heroin, over 50% of our cases that we analyze in Sacramento right now contain fentanyl. So it's not just somebody trying to go after fentanyl. It's somebody who is experimenting with drugs for the first time, trying a new drug out. There is no guarantee that they're getting or selling you what they say it is. And unfortunately, the likelihood that there is fentanyl in there is pretty good. Why is this so different? Why does this matter? Why is this unlike any other drug that we've seen out there in the world before? And the answer to that is potency. Fentanyl is different in the fact that it takes a very little amount to cause a really robust physiological reaction in the body. Everyone knows what a #2 pencil is, right? So you can see that just a little bit of powder on the tip of that pencil, that is enough of a lethal dose of fentanyl to take your life. Maybe put this in a little bit better perspective. Anybody here drink coffee, iced tea, add a packet of sugar? Okay. So look around the room. There's probably less than 500 people in here, right? If I took a packet of sugar, which equals 1 gram, and that packet represented pure fentanyl, so 1 sugar packet full of pure fentanyl, and I gave it equally to everyone sitting in this room, that would be enough fentanyl to take every single person's life. 500 people with 1 packet full of fentanyl. That is why this is so dangerous. That is why this drug is so different than we've ever seen out there in the world before. The last thing I want to bring up is if you are dealing with depression, anxiety, you've got the SATs coming up and you need to stay awake to study, and you're trying to get a prescription pill from outside on the black market, buying from social media. The problem is it's not just these pain pills that we're seeing fentanyl show up in. 98% of all tablets that are analyzed in Sacramento County have something else in them other than what's printed on that tablet. And the vast majority contains fentanyl. So things like Xanax bars, we're seeing fentanyl being put into a form that looks like a Xanax bar. Adderall, Ritalin. So it's not just if you're trying to manage pain, it's also if you're just trying to experiment with drugs in general or prescription pills in general. My last point that I want to make is how the potency of the pills themselves have changed and why this is becoming so much more prevalent when it comes to poisoning. Is now currently 7 out of 10 of the tablets that contain fentanyl contain a lethal amount versus 5 years ago when that number was around 20%. So we are seeing a dramatic increase in the amount of fentanyl in there, and 7 out of 10 chances of you taking a tablet that's going to take your life. So we're going to watch a quick little video, a little bit more about the Fentanyls or the fake tablets, and we'll move on.
So, why are there so many Fentanyls out there? Well, in part, it started with us. We are a quick fix, pill popping culture. If you have anxiety or back pain, there's a pill for that. But we quickly found ourselves in the middle of an opioid crisis. So the government started cracking down on prescription meds, creating a lack of legit ones, which were quickly replaced by fake pills. Drug dealers began importing cheap fentanyl into the US and creating their own homemade fentanyl. Then things really took off when the cartels jumped in and started doing so on a massive scale, flooding the US with millions of fentanyls dressed up to look like prescription meds. There are so many of these things in circulation, like literally hundreds of millions, that if you're buying off the black market, you're almost guaranteed to be getting a fentanyl. And they're easier than ever to get. Just go on your favorite social media apps and you'll find all kinds of ads for prescription pills. But what they won't tell you is that they're all fake, that you're actually getting a fentanyl dressed up to look like a legit drug.
So you're gonna hear a common theme or occurrence with our time together, and that's the one pill can kill. The DEA is the one who actually started this whole campaign, if you will. And the next thing is, if it doesn't come from your doctor, it's not legit. And that is really the messaging we want to bring home to you. So one thing that I thought is interesting, the CDC put together a chart of fentanyl deaths and how it has impacted every age group. And if you can see on the bottom, across the board, is broken down in age groups. Pretty much 19 to 69, all the way across, they've increased fentanyl-related deaths by almost 800%. That's tragic, but there's a reason why we're going directly to high schoolers. Instead of just stopping with social media and news and town hall and parent meetings, why do you think we're going to youth directly? Because the 14 to 18 group is truly the most impacted age group with fentanyl-related deaths. Almost 5,000% increase. Why? Why do you guys think that your age group is the most impacted? Might I suggest that one influence could be the fact that you are the most connected generation? How many in here have a cell phone? Okay. Gaming device, computer, social media. Yeah. Even if you have an internet connection at your house, you are a target for a possible deceiving factor. You see, we work with a company out of San Diego, and they are federally funded to track illicit drug deals online. And in the last 2 years, they have tracked over 80 to 90,000 drug deals online. You see, it's no longer that you meet somebody down at dark alley. They're literally sending and targeting kids at their home. So another influencer could be the fact that, just like the video said, it's not your fault. You have grown up in a culture where there is a pill for anything and everything. You hurt your back, you need to study, you want to play in the football game, so I'm hurting, I'm going to take a pill. With your innocence and some ignorance, because it happens, thinking you're buying online is a safe thing. And these drug peddlers and drug dealers are taking advantage of that and selling you something else. Now, are you able to start seeing and wrapping your brain around the fact that there is two sides to this coin? There are people that are looking for it, but that's not what the biggest concern is. The biggest concern is youth are being deceived to death, and that is where you come into play. You see, what we're finding is that there is a new category of victim. All of your families, your grandparents, your teachers, your loved ones want you to continue down this path of being healthy, making healthy choices. Before fentanyl entered the system and this new drug landscape, if you were to go down the path of experimentation or not so good of choices, you always had an opportunity to get help, to get treatment. You could start using more often, become a recreation, become a habitual, maybe dependent, but along the way, there was always opportunity to get help and stop. Because fentanyl is now in our entire drug supply, just as you heard from Jonathan, our scientist, it's not just one thing, it's in everything. And it could literally be one pill, one hit, one time, and you can die. That is how lethal this substance is. So I want you to understand, as you're seeing the numbers on the screen continue to rise, this shows you the 14 to 23. and the chart of how this is really impacting this generation. Yellow is fentanyl, the other drug categories are all in white. But every single number that you see that it's starting to climb isn't just a number. It represents a life that was taken, a future that was stolen, and a beautiful soul that had a chance, but someone took it. Every single one of the pictures here represent the families and the people that we have lost in this area. And I want you to understand that every number, every picture had a story to tell. And we are honored when we are able to work with the families and they come out and share their story with our audiences. You see, they have chosen to take their pain and turn it into purpose. And that purpose is to save your life. Because I can sit up here and talk about stats and data and facts all day long, but unless you have an impact to your heart, and there is a connection from heart of knowledge and heart of impact, change will not happen. So the next guest speaker I want to introduce to you, she is a resident here. She is powerful and amazing. And when I connected with her, I needed her to come and talk to kids. Please allow her to share this space with you, her pain, and give her your attention. Miss Natalie Page Whitaker, please.
Thank you, Miss Angela. Hi, everybody. I'm going to have you do this really quickly. I'm going to have you stand up. Stand up for a minute. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. I want you to stretch. Say hey to your friends next to you, and then we'll get going. So I'm going to give you 10 seconds. Are you ready? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Go ahead and take a seat. Thank you, Marysville, for being so respectful. I really, really appreciate it. Oh, I think we might have had a snafu in the front. It's okay, it's an old school. Don't worry, right? So good afternoon, Marysville. My name is Natalie Page Whitaker, and I'm so glad to see all of your faces. What a presentation so far. There's been a lot of information and a lot of statistics that have been given to you today. Believe me, I have sat through many high school assemblies in my time. If you did not know, I've been a teacher for 19 years, just across the bridge at Yuba City High School, teach PE. But I've always been a spectator at these things. I've always been you sitting in these seats. I've watched many presentations and left thinking, oh, I don't really know if that's gonna happen to me, myself, my family, or oh, I don't know. Honestly, is this really gonna happen in Yuba City or Marysville or Sutter or, I don't know, Wheatland? Is this gonna happen to any of my students? So today I stand before you as one of those presenters in one of those assemblies. Please hear me when I tell you this. Fentanyl will kill you. Today I've been given the opportunity to tell you about a student I had. Let me introduce you to Burnell Barmore. Burnell, or Burnelli I called him, was a freshman in my PE class. Burnell was a young freshman who moved to Yuba City in 2007 from Los Angeles. To say Yuba City was a culture shock would be an understatement. Burnell started the school year and soon became a multi-sport athlete. He immersed himself in football, track and field, and baseball. He made friends quickly, and he was a kid that was super easy to work with. He had a sense of humor, a kind heart, and he had a really good smile. I could never forget it. He would come to PE and ask me, "Come on, Miss Page, are you serious? I gotta run. I'm the fastest kid here in the NorCal state." And then he'd smile at me. And to be honest, Burnelli got out of a lot of running because he was the fastest kid. I couldn't argue him with that. At times, he would get out of running, and I would laugh. I enjoyed having Burnelli in my class, and he knew that his time with me was going to be short. He would move on to more specialized classes and would join football PE. I enjoyed watching his success as a student athlete on campus, and I would congratulate him when he became Athlete of the Year. It was awesome. Burnelli was respectful, humble, and kind. I would watch him graduate in 2011. He played football at Butte College and would later transfer to Midland University of Nebraska after receiving a scholarship in football and track and field. He was pursuing his dreams, and I wish nothing but the best for him. As a teacher, that's what we want. We want to send you guys out into the world, and you guys do amazing things. And when that happens, it makes us so happy. Time moves quickly, and I lost track of Burnell. I figured at some point in time, somebody would update me on his school progress, track and field, football. But the only update I got was that Burnell had passed away January 20th, 2023, at 30 years old. I was shocked. What happened? How did he die? I had heard from former coaches that he was struggling with some mental health issues. He had turned to drugs and alcohol. I reached out to that former coach, and he confirmed to me that Burnelli had died from fentanyl poisoning. So why does Burnell's death matter to me? Well, let me introduce you to my brother. Brett Page is my brother. Brett and I grew up here in Yuba City. We grew up in a household that loved us, fed us. Our parents taught us right and wrong. We were that normal family. My brother and I both graduated from Sutter High School, and my baby brother was a stellar athlete. He played football, basketball, soccer, and wrestled. He loved to hunt, golf, and fish. But most of all in high school, he loved his big white truck. But something else he liked to do in high school that he loved a lot too was party. My brother was the life of the party. He would be down to try anything. I think at first the party scene was something my brother enjoyed. It was social, it was fun, popular people partied. If you weren't there, you were missing out. But as time, my brother's party habits progressed. Drugs and alcohol provided my brother an escape from reality. It eased an anxiety he may be feeling, and in an instant, my brother's relationship with drugs and alcohol became his way to escape. Drugs provided him the way to medicate his racing thoughts, to numb out, or not to hurt or feel when things got hard. This fun partying, in time, would turn into an addiction. My brother's drug use would continue on and off in his later years. He was truly the unicorn addict. My brother was able to hold amazing jobs, he made lots of money, he maintained relationships, and not one time did my baby brother ever get arrested. But over time, my family homed in on his drug use, and we could tell something wasn't right. My brother at times would become distant, mean-spirited, unreliable, sometimes a guy we just didn't like. On January 21st, 2021, I was woken up at 2:30 in the morning by a knock on the door by the Sutter County Sheriff's Department office. 2 officers came to tell me that they had found my baby brother dead in the Sutter Cemetery in his big white truck. When they found him, he had a straw in his hand, he was warm to the touch, and they tried to Narcan him and perform CPR on him, but they were unsuccessful. And I'll never forget the 2 police officers who came to my door. And you know what they told me? Said, "Natalie, we played baseball with your brother. And he was a good man, and we are so sorry. We are so sorry." That moment changed my life forever. You know what I got to do after that? I got to go to my parents' house and tell my parents that my brother was dead. I want you to think about that. If you have siblings, I want you to think about having to tell your parents that. And then on top of that, I had to go tell my brother's wife why his 2 babies were sleeping in their house. It's a really hard thing to talk about, so thank you. Later in the investigation, my brother's death, yes, we would find out that my brother did take a drug, and it was laced with 1,600 milligrams of fentanyl. My brother never had a chance once he snorted it. My brother had no idea that this fentanyl was in the drug that he took. My brother did not go out to that cemetery to die. He went out there to get high, to numb out, and get up and go to work the next day. My brother was 36 when he died, and his death changed our world forever, changed his children's lives forever. My nephew at the time was 5, and my niece was 1. That's why I stand in front of you today. If you think for 1 second that this can't happen to you or your friends or your family members, you are sorely wrong. I lived in a world where I knew nothing about drugs. I thought people who did drugs were people who were homeless on the streets. It is not the case. And so I stand before you to not only represent my brother and to represent Brunel, so that if this information saves you or your friends, this is not to scare you. This is to educate you, to tell you that this is real. Educate yourselves, educate your friends, because I never, ever want any of you to have to be me standing up here talking about the loved ones that you've lost. God bless you all and make good decisions in your life. Thank you.
All right, we have Jonathan back, but before we get into the question and answers period, I do want to let you know that one of the mothers that came out to our, is this on? No. Can you hear me? How about this? All right. You turned it off, didn't you? Well, you didn't have a problem hearing her, did you? Thank you, Miss Natalie. It's always a pleasure having you share your story. But let me tell you, one of the families came out and they said, please, please incorporate the signs and symptoms of a fentanyl overdose. Okay, why? Well, because it's not like the overdoses you see in the movies. There's no foaming of the mouth or erratic behavior. That's another drug. What fentanyl does is actually the complete opposite. And the reason why this mom said, please share the signs and symptoms of an overdose and Narcan, because her son, Aiden, and his friends, they went out, they had a good time, they came back, he took something, and while they were gaming all night, none of his friends realized he was having an overdose as they were gaming in the same room. You see, a fentanyl or an opioid overdose attaches to the receptor in your brain, and you simply stop breathing. Not one time have you walked in here, have you told yourself, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. You see, there's a natural occurrence. Your nervous system, all of your organs are working together beautifully as they should, because there's nothing blocking the communication. With fentanyl getting in your system, an opioid overdose, what happens is it blocks that communication, it rests on the brain, and you stop breathing. It's a respiratory suppressant. So you just go from 10 to 8 to 6 to stop. You see, one thing that is important to understand is you understand your friends. You know how they act, and you could be that lifeline to save them. Sometimes it's more than they just need to sleep it off. Sometimes you need to check on them. A good telltale sign is their eyes. If they are pinpoint pupils, that's a sign something internally is going not right. Blue fingernails, blue lips, that's also a sign that all the organs are pulling the oxygen from the extremities of the body. And then, of course, if you can't wake them up, it's time to get 911 on the phone. Now, before I go into Narcan, I think I'm going to skip over this. I'll go back to it. It is so very important to understand that California has what's called the Good Samaritan law on the books. I used to be a crisis responder for youth. I worked with 16 different law enforcement agencies 24/7. Anytime a crime or a trauma happened with a youth, they would call me out to help them and their families deal with it. And one of the last time, after about 10 years of working, one of the last calls I went on was a group of about 15 and 16-year-olds that sat around. They were pill popping and drinking, obviously underage, and their friend started to have an overdose, started to have an adverse reaction, and started to go under. And not one of them wanted to call for help. They didn't want to get an adult, and they definitely didn't want law enforcement there because they didn't want to get in trouble. And that changed my heart and my perspective to get to youth before these life-altering decisions are made. Get to them to let them know what is on the horizon in our backyard and what you can do to save somebody's life. The Good Samaritan law actually protects you. If you are trying to render aid to someone, or if you are involved and you need to get 911 on the line, and first responders there, that is a protection clause for you. So what is Narcan? First and foremost, you know your friends. If something's not right, you get an adult or you get 911. First responders get there to help. They all carry Narcan, but as of this year, actually as of last year, the FDA has now approved that Narcan, or naloxone, is an over-the-counter medication. You do not need a prescription. Actually, you can get it at the gas station, and this ride-out emergency room is handing it out by the cases for free. You do not need any kind of a prescription. You cannot get high off this medication, and you do not need any special training. It is simply a nasal spray. You open the package, and if somebody is having what you suspect to be an overdose or being poisoned through fentanyl, this could potentially save their life. It's a Hail Mary. You might be able to buy some time for law enforcement to be there. How long does it take without oxygen for your brain to start going through brain damage? Yell it out. 4 minutes. What's the average response time for law enforcement or first responders these days?
Around 20.
Close. Depending on how many are on shift and where you live. It's anywhere from about 8 to 16 minutes. You having Narcan available could potentially buy time for this individual. Now, I want you to understand, when Miss Natalie spoke and said how much fentanyl was in her brother's system, if you put the two stories together with Mr. Jonathan saying 2 milligrams is enough of a lethal dose. You see, Brett Page had how much? 1,600 milligrams of fentanyl in his system. That one pill he had enough fentanyl to kill 800 people. He didn't have a chance even if there was Narcan. But what happens is the Narcan helps release the fentanyl off of the brain for a moment, but as soon as the blood starts pumping, it reattaches. So depending on how much fentanyl will determine how much is needed to get you to the hospital and save you. So we are going to, before we go into the closing, I know we started a little bit late, but we're looking like we're on time. As promised, you guys can ask us, you wanna come up here? Ask any questions. There are tons of myths out online right now. What if I touch fentanyl? It was on a $1 bill or a $100 bill and that person went out. Those are all myths. So we want to kind of combat that, and you guys are welcome to ask us any questions. And it usually takes one brave soul, and then we have to cut the questions. I know it's the afternoon. Who's going to start? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Talking about how they can be put into solid form. Is there any other form they can take, like liquid or gas? Yes.
That's a good question. So most of what we're talking about are the solid pill forms, but fentanyl pharmacologically can be active and activated in many different forms. So it can be dissolved into a liquid. It also is something that is capable of being inhaled or smoked. So it can come in many different forms. We just tend to see it in the most common form right now, which is a solid. Good question.
Great question. Right now, they are actually carrying it over the border in water jugs. So it is water soluble. So however they can get it in through our border, they're doing it. And that's the scary thing. Yes?
You say it can be transmitted by money and stuff like that, which I've heard a couple stories of that happening.
Yeah, those are myths. So we don't always believe what we read and see on TV and the internet, right? Yeah, so I'm sure you all have seen the law enforcement, how the panic attack freak out. Has anybody seen that? They come in contact with fentanyl and oh my gosh, I'm gonna freak out? No, it's out there. And there has not been one case, it's all been debunked. There has not been one case that is anything other than anxiety. The American Toxicology report has put that out there. And the only side note to that is it can be transmissible through a mucous membrane. So if there was wind in the air and it was a loose powdery substance, if it gets in your eyes, nose, or mouth, you will go down. Absorbed through your skin? No. That was a myth. Yeah, you gotta yell it.
How was that fentanyl made?
How is it made?
So,
Big tubs.
yeah, so it's a synthetic, which means that it's completely fake, but it is based off of a natural substance, which is morphine, heroin, opiate, and that's why it's an opioid, is because it's got the same active site as this natural substance. But what chemists can do is they can create it chemically to where that active site is working, but it's got different arms and different branches on the rest of the chemical. So that's how it's made. It's synthesized in laboratories.
Good question.
Good.
Is it making its way into the actual marijuana plant yet?
Yes.
Actually, like if you're like, I'm just smoking the actual plant, I'm fine.
Yes.
So a little bit about that. We're talking about very, very small amounts of fentanyl, right? That cause an overdose. So if you're thinking about somebody who's packaging drugs for sale, selling a bunch of different products or items, if they're not running a clean shop, which I can guarantee you they're not running a clean shop, there is potential for cross-contamination of fentanyl with other products, including marijuana. So if that's something that is being prepped on the same table, that is something that can actually pull up some of that fentanyl and have it on that plant material, thus kind of making a combination of the two.
And we work with the Sacramento Sheriff's Department. We work with all the different law enforcement agencies, and they just did a drug bust that they were soaking fentanyl, marijuana plants in fentanyl in the soil. So again, we're not here to tell you what to think. We're here to present to you facts, right? You're gonna be able to start figuring this out yourself. Not one time I was like, don't do drugs, kids, it's bad. No, here is what the drug landscape looks like. It is truly not safe for experimentation anymore. So we're presenting to you all the facts of what this looks like. Hold on, let somebody else ask a question. Anybody else? They're back there. Hold on. Anybody? Great question, by the way.
Yeah, you have a question?
Aren't there other symptoms like dozing off or slouching?
Yes, that's xylazine. Yes.
Yeah, so fentanyl, and this is, I guess, advanced fentanyl. Fentanyl is not just the only threat. Fentanyl is also something that can be mixed in with other things as well, such as xylazine, and we are seeing that, unfortunately, here in Sacramento County, which is a neighboring county, which means that it's probably not far off from being where you are. And that is something that other symptoms can be slouching, dozing off. There was, I believe, a nurse or a teacher at another school in the district who understood the symptoms really well. They had somebody falling asleep on their desk, but they were able to get them up, saw the pinpoint pupils, and that is one of the signs and symptoms is that slouching or dozing off. So, and it's just not fentanyl. So other things, unfortunately, are being mixed with the fentanyl now to make it last a little bit longer and be a little more impactful physiologically than what it is, which is scary.
Great question. I'm sure you guys have heard about the zombie drug in Philadelphia. It's all come across, it's here. I know we've mentioned Sacramento a couple times. I needed to address this. I know we're in Yuba County. It is a neighboring county. Sacramento County is one of the lucky ones that have their own crime lab. Everything that is seized with law enforcement, drugs, firearms, doesn't matter, gets sent to there. We have MOUs with neighboring counties. They too can send their information, their supply, whatever they seize into Sacramento County as an MOU arrangement. Otherwise, they'd have to send it off to DOJ, Department of Justice, and wait about 6 months to get a result. We are much quicker in turning court cases having a relationship with them, and we share the same numbers. So just to let you know on that. Okay, go ahead. You remember your question? No. So we have about 20 cases of xylazine, the zombie drug here, to go full circle. Okay, go ahead. Do you want to ask it?
Yeah. What does like fentanyl feel like? So I know kind of
What does it feel like? I've never taken fentanyl, but it is, so we know the statistics, it's what, 50 times more powerful than heroin, 100 times more powerful than heroin, right? Morphine. What happens is, as soon as you come down off your high, you feel like you're dying. You have explosive diarrhea, you start throwing up, you cannot contain your bodily functions, so what naturally you do is you take more fentanyl. So you see people riding this high of fentanyl constantly, just so they don't feel like they're dying. Does that make sense? So, yeah. And then you back there, and we'll start wrapping it up. Hold on, you guys. We're going to wrap it up here in a second.
Let me rephrase and make sure I'm answering the question. You're asking if there is basically a way if somebody is overdosing to fix that or to neutralize the drug. Is that correct? No. It is something that once it is in your system, your body has to metabolize it. So what Narcan and naloxone does is basically replaces it. It kicks that fentanyl or opioid off of that opioid receptor and hangs out there for a little bit. Problem is that also gets synthesized. And so if there is a abundance of that opioid or fentanyl in your system that outlasts the naloxone or Narcan, then it's just going to rebind to those receptors and you're going to go into respiratory arrest again. So it's something that you have to absolutely call 911, absolutely have to be monitored by first responders to make sure that they are monitoring your vitals to get you through whatever overdose. But if there is an abundance in your system, there's no way of forcing that out of the body.
Thank you, Jonathan. So to respect all of your teachers' time and your time, if you have more questions, stay after. But I'm going to close with this. At the end of the day, our hope was for you to fully understand fentanyl. And a gram, a sugar packet, how many could that potentially kill? 500. Good, you're paying attention. So when you hear things on the media and the news and things, when they talk about how many hundreds of pounds or ounces that are coming into our neighborhood, perk up and realize those are potential lives that could have been killed, but the law enforcement was able to intercept that. Now, at the end of the day, you guys, you know your friends. This information might not be just for you to know. You might have it all dialed in and all ready to go for your future. But we understand that 60% of youth today are struggling with some type of a mental health. Whether it's stress, depression, anxiety, something is causing a disconnect. And we want you to understand that this information, that if it doesn't come from your doctor, it's not legit. But we also want you to be agents of change. We want you to take this information and share this with your friends. We get it. Youth are going to talk to youth well before they talk to an adult. We understand that. That's why it's so important for you to understand. Because your friend might come to you and say, I am struggling, but I can get this online and nobody needs to know. I can do this online and it'll be our secret. You could be the one that saves their life. You could be the one that shares this information. So at the end of the day, that is what our hopes are for you. That you are the world changers with this information. You are the most connected, so we beg of you to share this with your friends and family. Get on social media, share the information that you've heard. We want it to have empowered you with truth and wisdom, not scare you with any kind of scare tactics, because empowerment works and empowerment will stop all of this chaos that's happening in our community. So at the end of the day, you guys, you are the world changers, but it starts with you. It doesn't matter about your conditions, that doesn't shape your destiny. It's your decisions in life that will shape your destiny. Go make good choices. Thank you for being an amazing audience.